The Hidden Child Within, How Jung's Psychology Reveals the Secret to True Healing. There's a profound moment that arrives in everyone's life, usually without warning, often in the quiet hours, when the world has stopped demanding our attention. It's the moment when you realize that despite all your achievements, relationships, and carefully constructed adult persona, something fundamental feels incomplete. You've mastered the art of functioning, of appearing together, of meeting expectations, yet beneath the surface lies an unnamed restlessness, a persistent ache that no amount of external success seems to touch. This isn't failure, this isn't weakness, this is your psyche calling you home. Carl Jung, the revolutionary Swiss psychiatrist, who fundamentally changed how we understand the human mind, identified this phenomenon as one of the most crucial aspects of psychological development. He recognized that within every adult lives a child who never stopped waiting to be seen, understood, and embraced. This inner child isn't a metaphor or a therapeutic convenience. It's a living, breathing aspect of your personality that continues to influence every decision you make, every relationship you form, and every dream you dare or don't dare to pursue. The invisible architecture of pain. Most people believe that maturity means leaving childhood behind, that growing up requires us to shed our younger selves like outgrown clothes. We're taught that emotional needs are childish, that sensitivity is a liability, and that the path to success involves hardening ourselves against the very feelings that make us human. But Jung understood something revolutionary. The parts of ourselves we abandon don't disappear. They go underground, shaping our lives from the shadows. When you find yourself overreacting to criticism, when rejection feels catastrophic, when you sabotage opportunities that could bring you joy, when you exhaust yourself trying to earn love that should be freely given. These aren't character flaws. These are the voices of earlier versions of yourself, still operating from survival strategies you developed when you were too young to know there were other options. Consider how a 5-9-year-old handles conflict. They might hide, comply completely, or act out dramatically. Now think about how you handle stress as an adult. Do you withdraw from difficult conversations? Do you people please until you're depleted? Do you create chaos to avoid intimacy? The patterns are often remarkably similar, because the emotional blueprint was created when you were still learning how the world worked. Jung called this process of unconscious repetition being lived by our complexes rather than living consciously. The unhealed inner child becomes a complex, a cluster of emotions, memories, and behaviors that activates automatically when triggered. It's why a simple comment from your partner can send you into a spiral that feels completely disproportionate to the situation. It's why certain types of people consistently drain your energy, while others make you feel inexplicably safe. The sacred wound in Jungian psychology. There's a concept known as the wounded healer. The idea that our deepest wounds, when properly tended, become the source of our greatest wisdom and compassion. Your inner child carries your sacred wounds, the experiences that shaped your understanding of love, safety, and belonging. These wounds aren't mistakes to be erased. They're initiations into deeper humanity. Perhaps your wound is abandonment, the feeling that people inevitably leave once they truly know you. This might have originated from a parent's emotional unavailability, a family move that uprooted you from everything familiar, or the loss of someone important during your formative years. The child within you learned that attachment equals pain, so your adult self creates distance even in the relationships you most cherish. Maybe your wound is shame, the persistent belief that something is fundamentally wrong with you. This could stem from messages you received about your emotions being too much, your needs being inconvenient, or your authentic self being unacceptable in some way. The child within you learned to hide, so your adult self becomes a master of performance, always showing the world what you think they want to see, rather than who you actually are. Or perhaps your wound is powerlessness, the feeling that nothing you do really matters, that you're at the mercy of forces beyond your control. This might have developed in a chaotic household where your needs were secondary to adult dramas, or in an environment where your voice was consistently dismissed. The child within you learned that safety comes from staying small, so your adult self struggles to claim your space in the world. These wounds create what Jung called the shadow, not something evil, but the parts of ourselves we've learned to reject. The shadow contains not only our perceived negative traits, but also our unexpressed potential, our authentic emotions, and yes, our wounded inner child. The goal isn't to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it, to bring these hidden aspects of ourselves into conscious awareness where they can be healed and transformed. The language of the unconscious, your inner child, speaks to you constantly, but not in words. It communicates through symptoms, patterns, and what Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to carry messages from the deeper layers of the psyche. That recurring dream about being lost or unprepared isn't random. It's your psyche showing you where you still feel vulnerable or inadequate. The way your body responds to stress is also a form of communication. Chronic fatigue might be your inner child's way of saying, "I need rest, not more achievement." Anxiety might be saying, "I don't feel safe in this situation." Depression might be saying, "I'm grieving something I've never been allowed to mourn." These symptoms aren't obstacles to overcome through willpower alone. They're invitations to deeper self-understanding. Jung believed that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness, and it will create whatever circumstances are necessary to bring unconscious material to light. This is why we often find ourselves in relationships that trigger our deepest wounds, not because we're gluttons for punishment, but because the psyche is trying to provide opportunities for healing. The partner who seems emotionally unavailable might be reflecting your own relationship with emotional intimacy. The friend who consistently lets you down might be showing you how you abandon yourself. This doesn't mean you should accept toxic behavior or stay in harmful situations. Rather, it means asking yourself, what is this pattern trying to teach me? What part of my inner child is being activated here? And what does that child need from me? The alchemy of integration, healing your inner child, isn't about indulging every emotional impulse or regressing to childish behavior. It's about what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of your personality, including the parts you've learned to reject or hide. This integration begins with developing what Jung termed holding space for your own experience. Instead of immediately judging your emotions as good or bad, appropriate or inappropriate, you learn to observe them with curiosity. When anxiety arises, instead of fighting it or feeding it, you might ask, what is this anxiety protecting me from? What does this remind me of from my past? The practice might look like this. You're at work and your boss gives you feedback that isn't entirely positive. Immediately you feel a familiar surge of shame, and the urge to either defend yourself aggressively or disappear entirely. Instead of acting on either impulse, you pause. You recognize this feeling from childhood. Perhaps it's similar to how you felt when a parent's disappointment seemed to threaten your very existence. In that moment of recognition, you have a choice. You can speak to that younger part of yourself, with the compassion you needed then but didn't receive. I understand why this feels scary. When you were little, disappointing adults felt dangerous, but we're safe now. This feedback doesn't mean we're bad or that we're going to be abandoned. It just means there's room to grow. This kind of internal dialogue isn't self-intelligent, it's revolutionary. You're literally rewiring your nervous system, creating new neural pathways that allow for resilience instead of reactivity. Over time, these conversations with your inner child begin to change how you move through the world. Reparenting yourself, one of the most powerful aspects of inner child work, is learning to become the parent you needed. This doesn't mean criticizing the parents you actually had. They were doing their best with their own wounds and limitations. Rather, it means taking responsibility for giving yourself what you needed then and still need now. If your childhood lacked emotional safety, you learn to create environments where you can feel your feelings without judgment. This might mean setting boundaries with people who dismiss your emotions, or creating rituals that help you process difficult experiences instead of pushing through them. If your childhood lacked consistent nurturing, you learn to nurture yourself. This isn't just bubble baths and self-want care products, though those can be part of it. It's about speaking to yourself with kindness, celebrating your efforts, even when the results aren't perfect, and allowing yourself to rest when you're tired, instead of driving yourself to exhaustion. If your childhood lacked a sense of safety or stability, you learn to create predictability and security in your adult life. This might mean establishing routines that ground you, building an emergency fund that eases financial anxiety, or surrounding yourself with people who are consistent and trustworthy. The beautiful thing about reparenting yourself is that it's never too late to start. Your inner child doesn't operate on linear time. It exists in the eternal now of the unconscious. When you begin to treat yourself with the love and respect you always deserved, that wounded child feels it immediately. The healing happens in real time, regardless of how much chronological time has passed since the original wounds were created. The ripple effect of inner wholeness. As you develop a healthier relationship with your inner child, the effects ripple outward into every area of your life. Relationships become less about finding someone to complete you, and more about sharing your completeness with another whole person. You stop attracting partners who trigger your wounds unconsciously, and start connecting with people who appreciate your authentic self. Your work life transforms as well. Instead of seeking validation through achievement or staying in situations that drain you because you don't believe you deserve better, you begin making choices based on what actually fulfills you. You might discover creative talents you abandoned in childhood, or find the courage to pursue paths that feel meaningful even if they're not conventional. Your relationship with your body changes too. Instead of seeing it as something to be controlled, perfected, or pushed beyond its limits, you begin to listen to its wisdom. You eat when you're hungry and rest when you're tired. You move in ways that feel good rather than punitive. You dress in a way that expresses your authentic self rather than conforming to others' expectations. Even your spiritual life deepens. Jung believed that the individuation process was inherently spiritual, not necessarily religious but connected to something larger than the ego. As you heal your inner wounds and integrate your shadow, you naturally become more compassionate, not only toward yourself but toward all beings who are struggling with their own pain and attempting their own healing. The dark night of integration. It's important to acknowledge that the healing process isn't linear or consistently pleasant. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the dark night of the soul, periods when the psyche is reorganizing itself and old structures are breaking down to make room for new growth. During these times, you might feel worse before you feel better. You might go through periods of intense grief as you mourn the childhood you never had, the protection you didn't receive, or the dreams you abandoned to survive. You might feel angry at your parents, at society, at God, at yourself, as you recognize how much of your life has been lived from fear rather than love. You might feel confused as old coping mechanisms stop working, but new ones haven't fully formed yet. The people-pleasing that once earned you approval might start feeling inauthentic, but you're not yet comfortable with the discomfort that can come with setting boundaries. The workaholism that once made you feel valuable might start feeling empty, but you haven't yet discovered what truly gives your life meaning. These difficult periods are not signs that you're doing something wrong, they're evidence that deep change is happening. Jung would say that the psyche is doing its work, breaking down outdated structures to make room for a more authentic way of being. The key is to be patient and gentle with yourself during these transitions, trusting that on the other side of the breakdown is a breakthrough. Living from authenticity instead of defense. The ultimate goal of healing your inner child is not to eliminate all pain or difficulty from your life. That would be neither possible nor desirable. The goal is to live from authenticity instead of defense. To respond to life from your centered adult self rather than from your wounded child. When you've done this work, you still feel hurt when someone treats you unkindly, but the hurt doesn't consume you or define your worth. You still feel afraid when facing uncertainty, but the fear doesn't paralyze you or cause you to abandon your dreams. You still feel sad when you experience loss, but the sadness flows through you rather than stagnating into depression. You develop what Jung called psychological resilience. Not the ability to avoid difficulty, but the capacity to meet it with your whole self. You can sit with uncomfortable emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can have difficult conversations without losing yourself in the conflict. You can love deeply without losing your individual identity. Perhaps most importantly, you develop a sense of inner authority. Instead of constantly looking outside yourself for validation, direction, or permission to be who you are, you learn to trust your own inner guidance. You can receive feedback without it devastating you. You can face criticism without immediately assuming it's true or completely dismissing it. You can make decisions based on your own values, rather than what you think others expect of you. The collective healing. Jung believed that individual healing contributes to collective healing. That as each person does their inner work, they become less likely to project their wounds onto others, and more capable of contributing to a healthier society. When you heal your own inner child, you become less likely to unconsciously wound the children in your life. When you integrate your own shadow, you become less likely to demonize others who trigger your discomfort. In a world that often feels divided and hostile, inner child healing becomes a radical act of peace. Instead of reacting to others from your wounds, you can respond from your wholeness. Instead of perpetuating cycles of hurt, you can be the place where those cycles end. This doesn't mean becoming passive or failing to address injustice when you see it. Rather, it means being able to take action from a place of clarity and compassion, rather than from reactivity and revenge. It means being able to stand up for what you believe in without needing to destroy those who disagree with you. The ongoing journey healing your inner child isn't a destination you arrive at and then you're done. It's an ongoing relationship, a continuous process of checking in with the younger parts of yourself and making sure they feel seen and cared for. There will be new wounds to tend as life presents new challenges. There will be deeper layers to explore as you become ready to handle more complex truths about yourself and your past. But once you've established this internal relationship, once you've learned to be a loving parent to your own inner child, you have a resource that no external circumstance can take away from you. You have an unshakable foundation of self-compassion and self-understanding that allows you to navigate life's inevitable difficulties with grace. The child within you never wanted to cause problems or make your life difficult. That child was doing their best to help you survive with the limited tools and understanding available at the time. Now as an adult, you have the opportunity to thank that child for their protection and offer them what they always needed. Unconditional love, patient understanding, and the promise that you will never abandon them again. In the end, Jung's wisdom points us toward a profound truth. We don't heal our lives by becoming someone different. We heal our lives by becoming who we were always meant to be. Before the world taught us to be afraid of our own hearts. The journey home to yourself is the journey of healing your inner child, and it's the most important work you'll ever do. When you finally embrace all the parts of yourself, the wounded and the wise, the scared and the strong, the child and the adult, you discover that you were never broken to begin with. You were just incomplete, waiting for the day when you would be brave enough to love every part of who you are. That day can be today. The child within you has been waiting long enough.